welcome. Welcome to Mending Threads, your safe place and your stronghold for whole body wellness. We have a fantastic show for you today. And I know we're going through tough times, but we're going to talk about something today that's going to make it sensible and we'll know how to move forward. So we're going to have with us today Reverend Dr. Samuel Massie and Miss Samantha to help us with the topic. So I'm so glad that you could meet and we could be together this morning. And I know we have an exciting topic because everybody right now is struggling. And I appreciate um, you guys getting up this morning. Reverend Samuel Massie of pastor of Reverend Dr. Samuel Massie of Real Life Christian Church, and Miss Samantha, who is a young woman glowing and trained in wellness, who has experienced some things and going to share with us her transformation process. So first, Reverend Massie, Pastor Massie, what I would like for you to do, I thought we would talk about um, the spiritual awakening as it relates to whole body wellness and what we go through, and to look at what that is. If you could just kind of share with me some things that you have put together. We have been talking about this COVID. Can you hear me?
It's breaking up. Go ahead, repeat what you said
Can you
because
hear
it
me
broke
now?
up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Is that better?
yeah,
Okay, then. So
yeah. Let me check something on the computer because it seems like I'm getting feedback. Hold on. Okay, maybe that might be better.
okay, very good. It's much better, much better. Thank you.
All
Okay,
right.
so I thought we would really put together. I've been getting calls about stress and trauma as it relates to COVID-19, and um, and I have patients and clients who are calling in to ask questions about why are they feeling certain way and they hadn't felt this way before. And so, but I know that it's all a process. So I wanted you to share with us some of your insights so that we could kind of put it together and hone in on some tidbits for people who are listening.
Okay, and this is in reference to COVID.
Yes, and in our lives, because we're in
Yeah,
the
and,
process of changing, right, in the face
yeah,
of COVID. Yes.
yes. Well, basically, with COVID, it's a new norm now, and a lot of times when we have to deal with something new and we haven't been trained to deal with it, it creates a lot of problems for us. And with our church, the pastors have been having meetings together. I'm kind of connected with a group of pastors, and we've been having meetings and talking about the role of the pastor during this time. We also been dealing with consecration in terms of calling a fast and doing the things that we need to do when we get back in the church, and calling all of the leaders and really letting them know that this is our finest hour. Even though it's perilous times, we are blessed to be in America, and we have to have a new protocol. You know, we have to. The people will be looking to their shepherd safety above all else, and that we should be sensible and prepare like everybody else. We know we walk by faith, but also you need to sanitize your hands. You need to wear the mask.
Right.
uh, you need to prepare your building and consult with other elders
Hmm.
and make sure that prayer is the key. And
Right.
like when we have greeters at the doors of the church,
Yes.
we should have sanitizer in their hands, waiting to sanitize the people's hand. And and I'm just speaking a lot of about the church and the church connection. We shouldn't disband what we started doing in addition to what we were doing before this happened. So, uh,
I think probably even so, we had a meeting with our health professionals and nurses and doctors this past week. And to add to that, we are having like a little orientation on Zoom for people, for congregation members and pastors. And one of the things is to actually look at the seating, because many churches are not thinking about seating patterns of 6 feet or 8 feet apart, and how you're going to go about doing that, and how that needs to be marked off just as it is in the store. And
well,
when you go, you need to still have that same safe distance. Hmm.
right. And we had our funeral service this Saturday, and we had to set up for the funeral. And so we actually, ahead of time, we got the names of all the participants that was going to be at the funeral, and we identified those participants by name, and we put their names on the chairs in the church where they should be sitting.
Right.
And we also had the steps on the floor where when they were going to visit, I mean, do the viewing of the Bible, we had the social distance. We
Okay.
had the social distancing. Mm,
Something is echoing in. I'm not sure what that is. Hmm.
uh, okay, and we actually had the social distancing. We had the entry and exit doors. We also uh, had them to know that they couldn't enter the building without having a mask on. We were doing all the different things to protect the people that would be taking part in the viewing. So we had our acts together. We were doing the things that we need to do. And, we were delegating people to do all different types of things that we needed to do to prepare for it.
And wipe down and clean up and sanitize. That is true.
Right.
And there's going to be a question. There are questions from the community about people in their shoes, about bringing in kinds of germs and viruses with their feet, and what are we going to do about that? And so I don't know. I have not checked into that with the Department of Public Health, but I do know that those are some issues other than the hands. So we'll have to get more information on that. But I think today, moving into that area, we also must talk about the way that we think about things, and how that's affecting us, the stress level, because people are all in anticipation and worried about the uncertainty of what's going to happen when they return to church, what's going to happen if they return to school, what's going to happen in life. And one of the things that they're finding is that people who have not been informed and who do not really know about the virus have more of a fear and uncertainty about what's going to happen. So, yes, information is going to be one thing that we're going to have to do more of. Even though they see it on the news, we're going to have to look at the information as it connects to the individual. For example, the young man asked me, when I go back to school, um, I'm worried about my not being able to sit next to my friend, or I'm worried about not being able to have a girlfriend, I'm not being able to go socialize or dance, and all of these things, the loss of hope or the change in the expectation in life, because that is the period in which they're supposed to develop relationships and peers. So now they're feeling a fear of loss, if you could say that. So, how would you look at that in terms of some changes, or from your perspective? of encouraging them through their spiritual development or health. Yeah,
Well, a lot of,
either one of you can respond to that.
okay. Well, one of the things I can say, just because we go back, we have to evaluate and use some wisdom. And see, and the wisdom that we use is to try to think ahead about how the children, if you were speaking of children, would be reacting, and evaluate our traditions and look at areas where we can work together and change things, and check the places where we've gotten off track, and then identify people to do specific things, because
Mhm,
there's a lot of things that we can do ahead of time and kind of do some mock things even with our own children at home, and
mhm,
kind of ask them questions and ask them how they think, what they be expecting when they go back to school,
mhm,
and kind of get a feel from them. And are you scared, and what you're scared of,
mhm.
and how can we address those things in order to keep our children from being afraid, because they see people dying, they hear about people dying, and they say, I don't want to go back to that place. And so we have to deal with the fear factor, and that's real. And so we
Yes, it
can't play
is.
it off as what doesn't exist.
Mhm. And then the thing about it is that sometimes when you explain to them, what it's all about, what is the lack of control the control that we do have every day, and that can help remove the fear of the lack of control. Like, we do have the control to take care of our safety. We do have the control to eat right, to strengthen our immune system, and to really look at possibly that if we strengthen what it shows, strengthen our immune system, that it actually decreases the opportunity for the impact of severe illness. So when they see that they do have every day something that they're in control of, it helps them decrease the fear of control, of lack of control or losing control.
Right. And also, when we go back, we need to go back celebrating. We need to make it a celebration. Have balloons and t-shirts and different things to kind of make it more exciting rather than traumatic. So
Mhm.
we have to, yeah.
I know what
So,
you're saying, trying to give them some sense of joy.
right.
Yeah, I think that you brought up a good point. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I can turn up your, yeah, if you can hear a little louder, yeah.
I think y'all brought up a good point about, first of all, getting rid of the fear factor. And I know for me, spiritually, I have been praying and asking God to show me what are some things that I can do so that I can prevent this. And I've just been taking a lot of vitamins. There was a point where I saw on the shelf that the shelf was full of vitamins. Now it's not. But at first, it's like no one thought to take vitamins. And I've been taking, a lot of vitamin C and something called elderberry, which is another type of immunity type of vitamin. So, um, just taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, providing the things that you need in order to fight off diseases.
Mm-hmm.
I even use vitamin C. I'm not saying that vitamin C can cure diseases, but I've even used vitamin C to cure a cold for me because I don't like to take a
Did you
whole,
bring my smoothie?
just over the counter medication. So
Right.
I use vitamin C just for a cold. And of course, I used a heavy dose of it, but it worked.
It
So,
does. It does. Matter of fact, you're right in agreement. Dr. Atkins was on, I think it was last week, and he was talking about the buffered vitamin C, which could really help, and vitamin D and some other vitamins that would be most beneficial to the immune system and the body. And I know I use a lot. I use 1,000 milligram of vitamin C.
me too.
Uh, that's right. Over, and I flush my system with it, and I feel a lot better when I do that. And I don't want to brag on an old car, you know, because I was gonna say, but so I'll say it. I have not had a cold, and I don't know when. Okay, and so I do know that the vitamins really help. I know that we're going to be having some conferences on the intake, on food and vitamin intake coming up. So we'll have like 4 or 5 different people with us, companies, and we're going to be talking about intake and how it helps, and have some physicians on with us. Okay, so one of the things that I want to go back to that, because here's another question I had. I had another question would be, um, what does it take in order for a person to overcome difficult circumstances? How does a person recognize that their spirit is awakening, and how does it help them overcome difficult circumstances like the COVID or the uncertain? I want to explore that. It's not like it's a canned answer, but I want the people to come out of it with exploring themselves.
Right. I would say that for me, first I'll start off by mentioning, like the first thing that came to my mind is when I went through a very traumatic circumstances around 2011. Excuse me. And I wound up losing my mind to the point where I completely forgot how to speak English. And English is my first language. I like mentally I broke down to the point where I forgot even how to communicate with people. So it was a very traumatic and awful time for me.
Mhm.
It
I
took a
really appreciate your sharing that this morning. It's just so real, and it lets me know, and other people, when you hear that, when a person can talk about it, it lets you know that they have really transformed. They're really on the other side of transforming, and they're not holding it in. Yes.
absolutely. I'm honored to be able to share this story if I can help anyone out there to overcome, especially in these times. And I know that during that time, I was so mentally broke down and depleted that, I couldn't even function in life. All I wanted to do really was read my Bible and go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that's what it took, actually. It took me taking a breath, and it took me truly spending some time with God and in praise and in worship. And just, I would say for those that don't even know God yet, so to speak, or believe in God, even just taking some time to evaluate and to think about like what is happening in your life and what do you need to do next. That's the first step. Just resting and evaluating. And I also was led, I would say, by the Spirit of God to get involved in healing fellowship. I went through a program called Celebrate Recovery. And I don't know if many people are familiar with Celebrate Recovery, but it's a tool to where you can recover. And basically, when I got involved with Celebrate Recovery, it was so that I can be amongst a group of people that was also focused on their recovery, who you're involved with and your environment is very important when you need to recover and when you need, you know, um, to get out of depression, when you need a boost up. That is very important because when you're around an environment that's toxic, it makes it that much harder. But when I went through Celebrate Recovery, it gave me a lot of different steps as to recover, allowed me to do a lot of evaluation, and it asked different questions as far as, how I'm really feeling and what else can I do to get through certain situations.
Yes, because it sounds like you're saying for the people that are listening that when you can get to a point of knowing that you can't handle everything, that you don't have it all, but that you're able and receptive to take information in, that you're no longer looking at yourself from looking at other people, you're able to go inside and look at yourself. You see, as you were reading the word, you were able to look at yourself and answer those questions. Mm.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, absolutely, because a lot of times, and I learned this even through a healing, my healing process, that a lot of people actually are suffering with depression and somewhat to a small degree, not the same degree of me, but losing your mind
Uh,
daily because you don't take that time to evaluate your life and think about what you're really doing and how you can improve. A lot of people don't have that sit down and improve mentality. That's how I'll put it.
mm,
Sometimes people are so wrapped up in going, doing that they don't realize that part of your life should be about making sure that you are at your best. Because how could you help other people when you are not at your best? And I'm sure
right.
we've heard the old saying, when you're dead, then who is gonna, help those other people now? Like you might be so wrapped up in helping other people, but
Yeah.
then if you're dead, who's gonna help them now? So even to do and even to perform, even to give out services, we have to have services for ourselves first, I would say. Now, I know that, some people have the thought where it's like they might feel like, I know growing up in a Christian community, people say, you got to put others first because the scripture says, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. But what they don't realize is that when you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, that is loving yourself. Loving yourself comes before loving your neighbors because the love is when you connect yourself with God. And when you connect yourself with God, God always shows you how to protect yourself and love yourself so that you can be a blessing to your neighbor.
You're
I'll
just so right on target. You're so right on target this morning because there was, and it's so inspiring to talk to you this morning. There was a pastor on the other day, and he was talking about. We were holding a meeting, and he was talking about this whole thing of being lonesome because you're isolated and whatever. What you're speaking about is that when you're able to do that, you might be isolated, but you're not lonesome. You're not lonely because you feel that the others are around you. You feel connected, and you feel like you're not by yourself. You see, because you have the word, you have the belief, and you know what you're going through. You see, you have a meaning to what you're holding on to. So I like what you. Yes. Go on and. Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Yeah. Were you referring to community?
Yes. Say that
Yeah.
again.
Were you referring to community?
our individual. No, I was saying we had a community meeting, and one of the pastors were talking about this whole COVID situation and what you were meaning just then about loving yourself, being connected, and how it's important to have some introspective understanding of yourself and love yourself. And I was saying when the pastor was speaking, he was saying that during this period we find ourselves lonesome or lonely because we are separated from other people, or that. But I was saying that possibly we're not that. We're not lonesome or lonely when we're connected with God. We are. We are
Oh,
just. Yes, we're just separated from other people. You see.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. There definitely has to be a time of consecration.
Mm-hmm.
It's not loneliness when you're being consecrated with you and God. You're, and there's a place for everything. There's a time when you need to be in a group of fellowship because, God also tells us, don't forsake the fellowshipping of the saints. And that's because we're supposed to be like a family to build up one another and to help one another. But then there is a time when you're supposed to be consecrated and called apart and alone with you and God to just hear what God is saying, to be able to figure out your thoughts, because a lot of times there's too many voices around you and you can't really hear, you can't really think. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's definitely a place for consecration. And no, if you're taking the time of consecration, it's not being lonely. Yeah, that's very healthy to be able to sit still and to think and to comprehend what's really going on with my life. Why am I really angry? Why am I having these depression bouts? What happened to me? And a lot of times it goes back to childhood when you start to really think about what are the core issues of your life. You'll find that a lot of it has to do with your childhood. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can be able to deal with those problems once you comprehend what the roots really are.
Yes, and have your words speak to you. The words and things that you want to say to speak to you. It talks about also that we're moving on in our journey, and I know that Reverend Massey talked about it the other week. Is that when we move out of what they call the ego, when we move out of the things that seem to be valuable or tangible, and then we begin when we're evaluating ourselves as to what we have and what other people think and those kinds of things. Then we remove ourselves from things that are not um, connected to our spiritual selves or our well self. Those are things that are connected to things where we begin to evaluate ourselves as to what we have instead of what we believe, what God has given us, and our solitude and our sense of being, you see, itself. Okay. So, Reverend Massey, if you could connect to her and kind of say something about that from your point of view, I'd appreciate it. I Miss Massie, Miss Samantha, I really appreciate what you're saying. And so I want you to keep talking a little bit because you're moving us right on over to number 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that's the truth. Right on in there. Matter of fact, we're having, and you're quite invited to join us. We're having a town hall that looks at empowering families and young people during the pandemic. And it's going to be a virtual town hall meeting. It's going to be on May the 2nd, May the 21st, Thursday, May the 20th, this coming week at 7 o'clock. And on our website, you'll find at wrc-houston.com tonight, starting tonight. It'll be on our website and you can look at it. But I will also send you the link, you and Reverend Mass, in case you would like to join us. I think it would really be interesting.
Thank
So,
you.
Okay.
So, Reverend Massey, could you speak to a little bit of what you were saying about the loving yourself and how you handle that with the COVID and actually how you help other people?
Yeah, well, basically, like I said, uh, as pastors, we have to kind of take the lead and know what's happening in the community, because we represent the community and we represent the kingdom of God. And the church should have the proper diet. There's a diet that we have naturally, and then there's a diet that we have spiritually. And so the church should be the one that provide the proper diet, and and help everybody to realize that we really are in the end time season, and these kind of things are going to happen. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars, and there's going to be diseases, and there's going to be pandemics, and all this stuff is going to happen because it's supposed to happen, because it's showing us that we're in the end times. And so we are the first responders in the spirit, and we have to get the proper information out to the church. Um, and so, the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, the teachers, we got to get the fivefold ministry established so everybody is functioning and reaching out to people. And so we have to become the intercessors. A lot of times we start focusing on ourselves, and it's not a time to be focusing on you now, but it's a time to be the watchmen's on the wall and start praying for the nation, praying for the people, and saying, when we start praying and thinking about others over thinking about ourselves, then actually God can help bring us to another level. Um, so the church should specialize in spiritual warfare when things are getting off. So that's would be what I would add to what um, so Samantha was saying, is to kind of help those that are.
So I think we're a little frozen over there. Okay, it froze for a minute. I didn't hear the last part. So what you're saying is helping other people is a facet, and that when we find inner peace, once we become whole within ourselves, we're better able to help persons in the community. And one of the things that help us become more whole is to actually also look at how to help other people, what we need to do outside of ourselves when we become more balanced, when we're able to then connect. So when we connect with the word, we have peace of mind, we are whole, then we can share our wholeness and actually help other people more fully in that, in terms of peace of mind. So
Right.
I sort of wanted to move and get a little shift and begin to see what could we do. We could begin talking about strategies to do some of these things, because when we leave, people then began to ask, once we talk about it, well, now how are we going to do this? What do we do? What do we put into play for peace of mind? What do we put into play to help other people? How do we let go of attachments to things? What is this wholeness thing that you're speaking about? How can we tell? What are the signs? What do we do?
Well, the first thing is that we have to choose to be happy and healthy. That's a choice. A lot of times we can keep our mind stayed on negative things, or we can start looking like what Samantha was saying. I'm going to start taking vitamins, and I'm going to start doing this, and I'm going to start doing that. You think on and then you have to make a decision, and then a plan of action, and then seeing how you return to normalcy, and then helping others to see the real reason for something happening and then seeing something good in it. See, a lot of times we look for, we think about all the bad stuff,
Yes.
but we should focus. Okay, it's just like the scriptures say, all things work together for good for
Mhm.
them that love God and them that are called according to his purpose. So we know that even though the situation looks bad, the believer walks by faith. And he said, you don't look at the things that you can see visibly, but you look at the things that you can't see in the spirit that can be pulled from eternity into time to change every situation, every circumstance, and every event in your life. And so we have to start responding to the new normal. A lot of times even when computers and all these different things start coming into play, a lot of people start saying, oh, that's from the devil. Going to the moon. Oh, God ain't gonna send nobody to the moon, because people don't want to accept change. But see, change is happening every day all around us. And so we have to learn how to adjust to change, because change is going to happen whether you like it or not. And so we have to respond to it in a positive way. And so we have to learn how to respond and start telling people how to respond to the new normal, because it is a new normal now. And it may not ever go back to be the way it used to be. So
Right.
you have to accept the fact that, because even when you see the governors and the president and all these different people say, well, we just can't close down the country forever. People are going to have to start back going to work. People are going to have to start back. A lot of times people say, well, I don't know, it might be too soon. And some people saying, no, I want to do it right now. And so we have to see that there is a different way of dealing with things now, and everybody's not exactly thinking the same way.
Well, you're right
So
about that. I tell you, I've had one alarm. Um, so when they relaxed the situation this past week and said, okay, maybe you could go out, and they gradually open stores and restaurants. So I was up on Main Street, and I decided, well, I'll tell you, I went in to get some cornbread, okay, because I didn't have the time to prepare it, and I had my little vegetables all prepared. So I knew this one restaurant that prepared cornbread. So I went to the restaurant to get the cornbread. As I entered the door, I want you to tell no one serving, customers, or whatever had a mask on. Okay. So this is what they're talking about, going back without restrictions and practices in place, because um, must have been 20 or more people in there waiting for food and not one mask. There were two people who had masks. So I just immediately turned around, because I knew that had to be that there was not a safe situation. And as I rode down Main Street, all of the restaurants who were now opening, uh, people were going in and no mask. Okay, so these were young persons, and many of them, and some of them were more mature persons, such as myself. I'm not going to say old, I'm going to say matured. And so this is what is going to, speaking of the governors and whatever opening up, this is what is happening right now in so many of the neighborhoods, because there may be a cultural practice there, or it may be that they're not believing the severity of it. They haven't been trained for the reopening. So something must happen. And I'm actually right now calling upon our churches to begin speaking on this on TV, radio, and however, whatever medium that we use, because we must get this out. Certain neighborhoods, particularly African American, Hispanic neighborhoods, are really being hit hardest for more reasons than one. When you brought up opening up and being prepared, is that we need to get the word out that this is real. and that it is not just going to go away. This is a new norm. You're going to need to wear a mask probably for a very long time, maybe even year and maybe forever. You don't know. So the thing is that something needs to rehappen in our the way that we think about things and the way we believe the God-given life that we have, the value of it, and our children coming behind us. So this is alarming. So I'm riding around now paying attention to what is really happening to this no mask, this opening up thing. And also, we're the foot soldiers on the ground. So when they go
Right.
back to jobs, the persons within this community and many others, both Hispanic and African American mostly, and low income families, are going to be the foot soldiers and probably are going to have more indices of death and illness. Okay,
Right.
so that's what I'm looking at. And then we also live closer in proximity with each other. So there are a lot of different things as we're taking surveys to find out. Yes, we do. We're going to have to change a lot of things that we're practicing right now.
Yeah, and that's why I said earlier that we represent the community and the kingdom of God, and that we are the first responders in the spirit, and we should get the proper information out to the church. Because if
Hmm.
we get information out to the church and the church accept it and begin to walk in that, then we will be the example for the community. And if they
Yeah.
see the church doing it, they say, wow, people of faith, and they're wearing masks too. I think we need to wear masks because these people are trusting God, and God must be telling them something. You understand what I'm saying? Because
Hmm.
a lot
Hmm.
of times
Hmm.
pe- people do stuff and die for it. Because there have been ministers out there that open up their church, and they're the ones that got the virus
That's right. Sure
and
did.
died from it.
Hmm.
So we understand that God is no respect of person, and we have to use wisdom when we do everything. Because see, just because my faith level is up to a point where I don't care or I won't do anything, it doesn't mean that everybody else's faith level is where mine is. And so I have to use wisdom when we do everything.
So I'm thinking we're missing a little point right there. We missed that little point there.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I
So,
said that as a leader, I should be responsible for the people and
mm,
not just myself.
yeah,
Just because my faith level is at a certain level where I can do something, it doesn't mean that everybody else's faith level is where mine is.
that's right. We're all on this, as I say to people, we're all moving down 290. We might be at different places on 290, but we're all heading to Austin, so to speak.
Right.
So,
And I would also say, even if, you feel like you live in a community or a space where you don't have to wear a mask, I would still wear them just to be a good example because children are watching, and if they're seeing, oh, well, these people aren't wearing masks, why do I have to wear a mask? You have to think about being an example and that people are watching you and that they're following you. And if it's safer and better for your community, better for those around you to wear a mask, even if you feel like it won't hurt you, you have to think about others and being a good example as a leader so that others following you and watching you will follow in your footsteps and also wear the mask. It's just like I know I am a security guard and I work in law enforcement. And there's some posts that I work at that there's not a lot of people. But when I do come in contact with people, I always make sure I have on a mask so that people know, well, if, she's wearing a mask, then I probably need to wear a mask too. And I do see people doing that. I'll come and I'll have on my mask and then I'll notice other people start pulling out their masks. So I think it's important for us to think, to be an example to those following us,
Mhm.
because I've also noticed in the black community, in the brown community, that I've walked around and, drove around, and I just see people standing around the street, sitting on the sidewalk with no mask.
Right.
And I'm like, come on, you guys, like, we are the ones that the stats have said have gotten most of the loss.
Mhm.
And it's not about, because I think one of the issues is, we should be free, right? If we don't want to wear a mask, then we should be free. But it's not about your freedom. Right now, it's about safety, not only for yourself, but safety for those around you, safety for your children, safety for your family. Because some people have walked around with the coronavirus and followed them, but it could have killed their family members. So we have to be, mindful that we are leaders of ourselves and that people are following us, and we should be a good example, and we should consider other people.
Mhm. Which is really a form of love. And when you really look at love, like unconditionally loving someone, is loving yourself, but unconditionally putting anything on that. So now you're not saying, I'm going to love you or take care of you because you provide something for me, but just because you're a part of my life. You're a part of my community, you see. Yes, I think it's very important. I think we covered a lot of good topics today, and I wanted to kind of pull it together so that we could leave with something. One, we want to remember that stress is normal. That stress is, and anybody can chime in as we come up with the ideas of what we covered. Stress is normal. It is a part of what we see every day, the demands of life. It affects our bodies chemically, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And but that is something that we must learn to respond to, and that the manner in which we respond to it will let us know how much stress we can handle. Okay, and if we learn to prioritize, look at the events in terms of our physical health, prepare for our physical health to sustain through our food intake, our eating, um, our vitamins, our way of thinking about things, our prayer, um, and particularly, I think, Miss Samantha, you mentioned rest, sleep, and reading the Word, something to refortify and rebuild the way that we think about things. And then keeping in how we help other people, how we model the behavior, as Reverend Massey talked about, and how that is an expression of our love that we have for ourselves and the love for God as to how we help other people, and begin to think about that as a priority, something that we really need to do as well. And that's a part of whole body wellness when you're able to do that. And that spiritual awakening begins when then we move away from just evaluating uh, ourselves on the outside of what we have, and that we don't filter God through our ego as to what makes us feel good or what makes us look good or what prioritizes us. That we're able to say that we have fallen, that we're able to say that we're struggling. And I always said, when we go through those things, because I can share some things. Um, I remember the period of time when I had to struggle over people at the job asking you to do the wrong thing and sharing mistruths about you because you would not do that thing. And how to stand. Oh, and I remember how young I was and how I would cry, like, why are they doing that? But once I really read and I understood, it was not about going through that. And I had to realize that I was going to go through struggle all my life, but it was how I was going to go through the struggle, how strong I was going to be, what I was going to believe, and how I was going to share that belief with other people through my behavior, through my words, and how I acknowledge how God has taken me through and how He does it every day. So those are some of the things that that I think that we could help other people with. And I think Miss Samantha and Reverend Massey, you really have done a good job today. When I say a good job, I understood it all, and I'm sure our listeners are going to understand how to use it. So if you have any one word or two words that you would want to give today for a person to be able to, through Mending Threads transformational series today, take home with them, what one thing would you have, Miss Massey and Reverend Massey, that you would say?
Well, for
Well,
myself, go ahead, Samantha.
no, you go ahead. It's okay.
Well, for myself, I would just say that we should choose, life is a choice, and that we should choose to be happy, and we should choose to be healthy. And then we should, try to see the real reason for something happening, and then seeing the good that's in it.
Okay.
And then knowing also that because things are happening in the world, that the norm that we used to know may not be the norm anymore,
That's
and
right.
that we should respond positively to the new normal.
Okay. Okay. Sister Samantha. Mm-hmm.
I just would say, first of all, to those who have lost people in this time, great condolences to your thoughts and to your
I can't
family.
quite I can't quite hear you. Say that again.
For those who have lost someone in this time, I was saying, first of all, great condolences to your losses. We know that a lot of people have lost loved ones, and it's been very disheartening. But um, I would just encourage you to remember that the fact that God has you on the earth still, that means that you still have a purpose. So don't give up, and definitely find a community where you can recover and where you can heal. And that way you don't feel like you are taking on this struggle by yourself. And I would say research different places where you can get the proper healing that you need. And also you can research different, like I mentioned, vitamins or tools that you can use in this time to make sure that you are protected and you are healthy.
And I wanted to add, and then we would say that would bind both would be that the difficulties that we experiences are really helping us overcome, and we are to expect those difficulties because it's it actually taking us to learn how to be a whole person to address anything that we come in contact with. I want to thank both of you today for being here. Reverend Dr. Samuel Massey of Real Life Christian Church and Sister Samantha, Miss Samantha, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and being here. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You do the same.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I want to thank Reverend Dr. Samuel Massey and Miss Samantha for being with us today. And I want to thank you for showing up and listening to us and participating. For I want you to remember our theme: renew beliefs, rebuild faith, and reconnect families and communities. And think of this: it is not the circumstances that we meet, it is the manner in which we respond that determines our health, our happiness, and our success. Please check us out on wrc-houston.com for any upcoming events and resources. And I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on next week.